Hi, kids. It's that time again. Do I need a ring light? I might, because it could only help, right? Hi, everyone. Welcome. We have been doing a series of interviews as we approach the midterm elections next Tuesday. We're trying to get conversations going with a lot of people who can help us understand what's going on. Hi, everyone. I'll give everyone a chance to join. Hey, little biscuit. Hi, everybody. Listen, tonight, I'm going to be interviewing Charlie Sykes. He's a Republican, a conservative commentator. He stepped down in December of 2016 as one of Wisconsin's top rated and most influential conservative talk show hosts. I thought it's important for us to hear from some Republicans about what's going on with these midterm elections. Charlie started The Bulwark. I highly recommend it. He's editor at large there. He's host of the Bulwark podcast, and he's an MSNBC contributor. So let's all kind of hear what Charlie has to say. This is a really important conversation, everyone, and I hope you'll stay and just listen for a few minutes. I'm feeling great. Thank you very much for asking. And let's see if Charlie is here. These Instagram lives have gotten a lot easier. So I know you guys might be ODing on politics, but I can't think of a more consequential and important election, a certain midterm election. Hey, Charlie, how are you?
Good. How are you? More importantly, how are you? How are you feeling?
I'm good, thank you. I'm really doing well. I just got over a pretty bad cold and haven't felt very good in that department, but I'm feeling really well. Thank you for asking, Charlie. Honestly, I'm really worried about the state of the country. Really, really worried. And I hope that some people will watch this and really talk to their friends and family members about what's at stake. Charlie, I was just kind of giving your seat before you joined me. But I know that you wrote a book called How the Right Lost Its Mind, which presents an impassioned, regretful, and deeply thoughtful account of how the American conservative movement came to lose values and how the right can recover its traditional values. So I guess I'll bite. I mean, how the hell, Charlie, did the Republican Party lose its mind? I mean, it is just unbelievable, the state of GOP these days. What the hell happened?
Well, it happened over a long time and then all at once. And, I wrote this back in 2017 and it's gotten so much worse since then. I could write a new chapter virtually every single week because, I was pessimistic back, after Trump's victory that principled conservatives were going to go into exile. No idea there would be so few of us. And I had no idea how far the crazy would spread. So, I share your alarm. You mentioned that I'm a Republican. I certainly do not identify as a Republican anymore.
So what do you identify as? An independent?
As an orphan, as a political orphan who is also alarmed at the state of our democracy and looking at the state of our politics and seeing a really dangerous downward spiral. And by the way, people can say, well, this has been happening for 10, 20 years, and that's true. But like everything else in our society, it's been accelerating, and the decline has picked up a lot of velocity. In fact, I would argue that what's happened over the last several days marks a breaking point in our politics.
I know you about that, Charlie, and of course you're talking about, I'm assuming the attack called Pelosi and the act, the positively, craven and disgusting response from some high level people within the GOP. I read an article in Time magazine comparing this to when Steve Scalise was shot on that baseball field by a volunteer for Bernie Sanders, and how universal the condemnation was by politicians of all stripes. Right. This is a very different reaction. Talk about what you're seeing unfold across the spectrum of the GOP, because I don't think it's everyone. And do you mind while we talk?
Yes, absolutely. No, please. So, I mean, look, there are people like, I mean, Mike Pence issued a very, very strong statement about it. Just like everyone had done, after Steve Scalise was shot after the thwarted attempted attack on Justice Kavanaugh. But when I say there's kind of a breaking point, it is this beyond the normalization of political violence, the instinct to immediately downplay it, to turn it into a laugh line, to turn it into a joke, the speed with which completely baseless conspiracy theories are spread. I mean, look, we could have had this conversation anytime over the last 6 years, right, Katie, about, we live in a post-truth world. But I think that we saw demonstrated how rapidly and virulently these lies can spread. Look, I mean, after Steve Scalise was shot, there were not stand-up comics joking about it. You did not have prominent Democrats, implying that there was some sort of sexual misconduct involved. Whether you're talking about Donald Trump or Elon Musk, in the first 72 hours, after this vicious attack on an 82-year-old man who had his skull fractured, you had people putting out the vilest kinds of stories, even after I think the evidence made it clear that these were untrue. So we are in a very, very dangerous period. Somebody asked me the other day, why are people like Carrie Lake, why are they turning this into a laugh line? And my quick answer was, because she knows that's what the base wants, and she knows that there will be no political consequences for it. That's a very toxic moment.
Well, I mean, I have so much to ask you, but how does the base so base, right?
Yeah, I mean, what has happened over the last 6 years is that there has, and look, Donald Trump didn't cause all of it, a symptom of it, but he's clearly fed into the darker impulses of people who like the cruelties, like the idea of owning the libs, but also the process of demonizing the opposition. That that the opposition doesn't simply disagree with you about taxes. They're evil. They hate God. They hate America. They're molesting children, and this has created a really toxic environment where we have Americans who don't want to debate other Americans. They want to destroy them. Inevitably, that's going to lead to violence, and I think that we have been warned over and over and over again that we need to dial down the rhetoric. We need to be aware of the rising tide of threats, and yet nothing seems to sober us up. January 6th didn't sober us up. Hang Mike Pence didn't sober us up. The potential attack on Justice Kavanaugh didn't. And clearly, this vicious attack on Paul Pelosi has had no impact on people saying, boy, maybe now it's time to lower the temperature.
But Charlie, isn't this where leadership comes in? I mean, you had Donald Trump saying in an interview, I don't know what the platform was, but he said, quote, it's weird things going on in that household in the last couple of weeks. Probably you and I are better off not talking about it. The glass, it seems, was broken from the inside to the out. And, so it wasn't a break-in, it was a break out. You have these people in positions of power who are actually setting the tone and starting the lies, which only perpetuates it even further. One official, I think Jon Stewart was interviewing him, he said, a lot of people think the election is rigged. And I wanted Jon Stewart to say that's because people like you in positions of authority are telling them that. I guess why aren't our leaders, why do they have absolutely zero moral compass? And two, why are people so impressionable and gullible? I mean, there's something else going on here, Charlie.
Chris, you're asking the question that I ask myself all the time, and asking myself for several years now. But to your point of leadership, this is crucial, because thought leaders, respected figures, can either appeal to the better angels of your nature, or they can be the darker aspects. And there is that role that people play. When somebody might laugh at something, or go into a kind of a sick place where you say, no, you don't want to be that person. This is not who we are. Let's not say these things. And that was routine routine up until it feels like, I won't say 5 minutes ago, but until a few years ago. It was routine that when there was an American tragedy, we would pull together, that everybody would say this. And that leadership was important because, look, human beings are complex. You know, they're not all angry. They're not all, you know, sweet. They have a mixture. And so what do you tap into? So the question you're asking is, why don't those responsible, moral voices, why don't they push back against that? And I think that in many ways they've been exhausted. This kind of culture has been normalized. They are fearful. They are terrified of being attacked on social media or by Donald Trump. So, you know, it is one of those cases. I know it's a cliche now, but how the best lack all conviction while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. And so then you asked an even harder question. Why are so many people so apt to believe this? I think that it's part of the new, obviously, hyper-tribalism, that people have now taken this as part of their identity. This is part of their community. And that the anger has been fed and stoked for so long that this is, you know, and they're surrounded by people who share this secret knowledge, what's really going on. And maybe to a certain extent, you know, this is something that's always been there, but now because of social media platforms, it can be spread instantaneously without any sort of a pushback.
I was going to say not only pushback, but with like any kind of rational thinking. It's almost in terms of the response, and you know that people immediately go into this default position without, I don't know, I think you're right. I think it's so entwined with identity and with us, them on both sides, I think, in terms of your automatic reflex. And I don't know, how do you stop it? You were going to say something. You don't.
No, really, but I want to make it clear that I don't have an answer for this. In fact, you know, on my podcast today, I was having the exact same conversation you and I are having with Elizabeth Williamson from the New York Times, who's written the book about Sandy Hook and the fight for truth. And I kept coming back, you know, Alex Jones was lying about these murdered children, was getting people to believe that they were actors. And I kept coming back to it. Why would people believe this? How does a lie that toxic get spread? What is it? You know, is it a political thing, or is it a psychological quirk out there? And her book, which is really, you know, a fascinating look at, because that was really kind of the beginning. That was 10 years ago next month. And that was kind of the template for how really vicious untruths get spread and how difficult they are to refute, even when I think most normal people go, how could anyone take you seriously after you've mocked the parents of children who've been murdered at Sandy Hook? So, but I wrestle with this as well. What is it in the minds of people? And I think part of it is this belief that they have a special knowledge, they have a secret knowledge, that they are therefore special.
That they're somehow. In fact, recently, the truth cannot catch up with these lies because the lies are so deeply embedded and they are so deeply invested. And the people that ought to be pushing back against them have once again decided they are not going to speak up. But also they see those who speak up get punished, i.e. Cheney, right? I mean, at what price do you speak up? But who should be speaking up? Who we have? Why is Mitt Romney speaking up? Are sort of the last of the endangered, the quote unquote rhinos or moderate Republicans who want to reach across the aisle? Why aren't we hearing more from just fair-minded and decent Republicans who want to call out this behavior in no uncertain terms?
Yeah, but it should be universal. I don't know the answer to your question. I mean, I know that Mike Pence issued a statement. I know Mitch McConnell issued a statement. Look, this is like the bare minimum they could do. But it even shouldn't be a question, why didn't this person do it? It should have been, and no one should have even imagined that you could go on television or onto a political rally stage and joke about this. Because what's broken, though, is that norm. That there was a time when if you joked about someone being assassinated or attacked, the reaction would be that people would gasp, they'd be horrified. And yet when Kerry Lake down in Arizona the other day, the crowd loved it. They ate it up. So something is broken, and it's getting worse, I think. And I think that, you and I have probably, ourselves, well, what is the breaking point? What will cause the fever to break? Would people go, okay, that's terrible? Well, it didn't have to happen after January 6th, and it's not happening in real time right now.
I even, God forbid, 11 had happened in this era. If even that kind of national tragedy, maybe for a day or two, but soon the conspiracy theories would start, I think, populating, the internet and start becoming the focus of conversation, because we saw those pop up anyway, and that was in 2001.
Well, and think about how much things have gotten more toxic since 2001. And by the way, when I'm talking about the breaking point, obviously it's sort of, in the background. For the last 5 years, we've talked about what is the responsibility of social media networks to stop the hate and the disinformation and the false information. But what happened over the weekend? Elon Musk takes over Twitter, and within 72 hours of taking over, he himself, the richest man in the world, is tweeting out this homophobic conspiracy theory about what happened. So, to the extent that there are any guardrails left at all, we've got signaled where that's going.
Hey, so I want to ask you about democracy. I'm trying to, do you think people, I know that Democrats say a threat to democracy, according to a recent NBC poll, the number one issue Democrats care about. Why do you think Republicans don't care about it, and how serious? I think people have been throwing around those terms, and they risk losing their potency. People are like, yeah. But this is really serious. Can you tell us, Charlie, why this is so serious? And do you agree with Alberta, who wrote in The Atlantic, that the midterms might be the last chance to stop election deniers and a threat to democracy, and to protect the presidential election?
I do agree with Tim Alberti. He's one of the smartest guys out there. And, when you think what it means in all of these swing states to have people who have openly said that they would not have certified the election, that they might have gone along with throwing billions of votes. So, yes, it is extremely serious. On the other hand, I think, and I'm interested in getting your view on this because I think you agree with this, I think there's a real danger that the media creates bubbles where repeat the same words to each other over and over and over until they kind of lose their potency and then wonder why it doesn't resonate with. So one of the problems with Democrats is I don't think they made it as tangible, relevant to people's lives as, for Republicans have successfully done with inflation, with spending, with crime,
but in fairness,
other issues.
In fairness, though, sorry, I mean, democracy crumbling is at this juncture still fairly theoretical.
Right.
Certain things are going to need to crumble. The bricks, the foundation is going to have to slowly give way. Where, as I've talked to other political experts like you, people go to the grocery store every, several times a week or once a week, or they go to the gas pump when they go to the gas pump. So this stuff is in their face. This other thing is like the Social Security drying up. How, I think people really understand some things until, there's a civil war.
Right. Look, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think that this is like a 12 in terms of the threat. But I think that, we have to be realists about, what the voters are going to, have top of mind. We had a big poll here in my home state of Wisconsin today showing everything's very, very even. And I thought what was, very interesting was they asked voters what are the, most important issues. And I'm sorry that I don't think that democracy was in the top 5. Abortion was not even in the top 5. And I think that this is where politicians need to ask themselves if this is genuinely existential threat to the future of the country. How should I adjust my politics to this? How should I, figure out a way to reach across to those independent voters, those swing voters, to make them, think that I am paying attention to their concerns? I guess I would call this popularism. And I think that one of it will be interesting to know whether the Democrats take the proper lessons out of what I'm afraid is going to happen next week.
Well, I want to point out at the same time a Quinnipiac poll in this summer, Charlie, found that 69% of both Republicans and Democrats believe American democracy is in fact in danger of collapse. That's a pretty high percentage of people. I mean, maybe now inflation, gas prices, grocery bills has overtaken that, but that's pretty significant, isn't it?
Oh, listen, I mean, yes, it's very significant. However, I would also suggest, though, that Republican voters who express that concern have a different agenda than Democratic and Republican voters, different agendas on all of that. But then again, there was also that study in the New York Times basically found that yes, Americans are deeply concerned about the fate of democracy, but it's not going to determine their votes. I have to admit I have a hard time with this psychologically, that if you actually believe this, would you still go into the voting booth and vote for a Carrie Lake Masters down in Arizona, or a J.D. Vance in Ohio? Would you still do that? And apparently there are some voters, and I'm not going to claim to be enough of an expert to explain how someone says, yes, I'm deeply concerned about these people might destroy democracy, but I like their position on what the federal budget and inflation more than that. I don't know.
Yeah, in fact, question from somebody, I don't know if they're still with us. If governor races in Texas, Arizona, Georgia, and Florida go blue, what is the safeguard for the vote count? Carrie Lake won't.
Well, I think it's a very legitimate question. Now, in Georgia, though, you have a Republican governor who did stand up to the pressure to Donald Trump's pressure. So you have to give, whatever you think about Brian Kemp, he did stand up against that along with Brad Raffensperger. But
Brad Raffensperger, hero though, right?
Well, I mean, he put up with a lot. But in Arizona, if it was in Pennsylvania or it was a place like Michigan, I don't know. I don't know where this is going, because I think that we're seeing a continued radicalization where I think that we've seen this before. It's like, no, we didn't want to throw out the vote to, well, yes, we have the right to throw out the vote. The Constitution gives legislatures the power to do this. And if you are convinced that the other side is so evil that you must stop them from ever getting into power, you could rationalize and justify overturning an election. And watching the speed with which this is happening, I mean, the revisionist history of January 6th, in answer to the question, I think people ought to be very, very alarmed about what it would mean in a state that has an election denier as governor and or secretary of state.
One final question. I read that Jim Jordan, the Republican of Ohio, who serves as the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, the Republican, apparently sent letters to Merrick Garland, Chris Wray, Attorney General, FBI Director, respectively, outlining potential that would be launched if Republicans reclaim the House majority, which would include examining the I always have a hard time with that, politicization and by FBI and the Department of Justice's, quote, unprecedented raid on President Trump's residence. What do you see, Charlie, is unfolding in the next couple of years? In fact, Republicans take over the House and Senate?
Oh, I think you could have investigations all the time, 24/7. You'll also have series of impeachments. On my Bulwark podcast tomorrow, I talk with Bart Gellman from The Atlantic, who was predicting exactly, that whatever they're saying now, they will impeach Joe Biden. There will be moves to impeach Joe Biden.
What for, Charlie?
No, it's all a pretext. It's to be determined. I mean, they'll come up with it. Will be the base is demanding it. Donald Trump will demand it as retribution. It almost doesn't matter what it is. I mean, you'll come up with something. They will try to impeach the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. If Merrick Garland criminal charges against Donald Trump, I predict that there will be a move to impeach Merrick Garland, and people like Jim Jordan will he will be leading the charge, and this will become a litmus test that for Republicans in Congress, supporting every one of these impeachment votes will be as much as a litmus test as the vote on Donald Trump's impeachment, by which I mean that if you're a Republican and you do not vote to impeach Joe Biden, you're done. You're going to be defeated in your next primary. So it's probably going to be close to a party line vote. So, strap in. It's going to be Hunter Biden investigations, around the clock, Benghazi style investigations, and then there's no way that Kevin McCarthy will resist the MAGA pressure to impeach Joe Biden at least once.
Do you think this is what Republican voters really want our leaders to be focused on, or see it as revenge for all the investigations into Donald?
Well, it is just revenge. And obviously, if you were to ask them right now, they'd say we want them to be focused on the economy or, fixing schools or something like that. And this, of course, is the danger for Republicans, that they will let their angry id take control and that they will go too far. I mean, that's the real danger that they have. I was talking to a senior Republican here in Wisconsin about some of these issues today, and he said, basically, 1/3 of base is just nuts. They're crazy, but they call the shots and control the other 2/3. And unfortunately, he is one of those other 2/3 who lacks the spine to stand up against them, which then feeds it. So I think that's kind of the dynamic that nobody wants, to go back to an earlier question. Once the angry Marjorie Taylor Greene base of the party begins to demand and bay for blood, is Kevin McCarthy going to stand up against it? Is he going to tell Donald Trump, no, we're not going to do this? No chance.
And in fact, I've been reading articles about how Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be super powerful, whether she has the committee assigned or not. Kevin McCarthy is holding her close and wanting to make sure for the base that he's saying, look, I respect her and I agree with her. It's a scary out there, Charlie, and I really appreciate your chatting with us tonight and giving your perspective. I'm really enjoying the Bulwark, so keep up the good work. I know you love reading my newsletter Wake Up Call every morning too, Charlie.
Yes. And of course, follow you on Instagram. So.
Great. Well, thanks so much for doing this, and keep us posted. I don't know, I feel very hopeless and depressed about what's going on, and I don't know what to do about it except for to make sure other people know what's going on and they recognize the peril our democracy is in.
Well, pour yourself another Cabernet. That'll at least help.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, everybody. Bye.